meeting today with our prayer as usual. Let's bring our minds together. Let's remind ourselves of our nature, reminding ourselves that we are immortal spirits. Let's open our hearts and talk to God, our Creator. Dear God, here we are, once again, gathered in your name. We thank you for this wonderful opportunity that you have given us tonight. We thank you for the presence of the spiritual benefactors who we know have been here preparing this place even before we arrived. These benefactors who are so patient and loving towards us, who are here with us every week. We thank you for them. We thank you for the Spiritist doctrine in our lives, this wonderful doctrine that teaches us who we are, where we are going, where we are coming from, and why we are here. And thanking you for all these blessings, we also ask for your help, so that tonight we can choose to concentrate and learn the teachings that will be presented to us. We pray that we may be able to take the most advantage of all the teachings that we presented here. May we be humble enough to understand how much we need this doctrine in our lives. May we be humble enough to understand how blessed we are and where we are in our journey towards evolution, towards perfection. We pray that all of us, brothers and sisters, incarnate and discarnated, who are here learning together, may choose to be fully present and be connected with your benefactors tonight. And we pray that you, God, may be with us at all times, but that we especially may be able to choose to be with you. And so we ask your permission to start our meeting tonight. So be it. Hello and welcome everyone. Tonight we are blessed with a lecture by Evanise M Zwirtes. Evanise is the director of the Spiritist Psychological Society in London. She is a lecturer that gives talks nationally and internationally as well, and she is a psychotherapist by training. And tonight she'll be talking to us about mediumship, more exactly mediumship, how to understand it, and what to do about it. And with that, we pass the word to Evanise.
Good evening to everyone. It is a great pleasure to be once more here with all of you, and it is opportunity of learning, knowing that if I'm here speaking means that I learned already, so I have a second opportunity to reinforce also the subject in my unconscious mind. Mediumship is a very complex and very interesting subject, which is very huge, can be seen and understood from different levels, from different dimensions. We have available here 1 hour to talk about, and then after that we have 15 minutes for questions and answers if you are left with some doubts. Then we start about, as Karina said, the title is Mediumship, How to Understand and What to Do. How can we understand mediumship in our lives as spirits as we are, or as transpersonal beings as we are, and what to do with that? Understanding that when we talk about mediumship, it is very different according to the individuality of each individual. So we don't have the same way how it is presented and how we deal with it, and perhaps how we understand it, considering our inner unique way of perceiving. We start with Stanislav Grof in the book A Tempestuosa Busca do Ser, where he states that in the modern society, the spiritual values have been generally replaced by materialistic considerations and largely ignored. It is becoming increasingly evident that the yearning for transcendence and the need for inner development are normal and basic aspects of human nature. He is reminding us here that we, as we are much more spiritual in essence, even if you may not be conscious or aware of that, there is the need that naturally we are searching for more when we, let's say, are more on the reductionist view of living. And that in itself is very positive, although sometimes it comes through awakening in a confusion or a bit of difficulties that is helping us to focus within so that we can understand ourselves better, and also to search and to find deeper inner answers for ourselves. And Allan Kardec, in a book, O que é o Espiritismo, he says that Spiritism is a science that deals with the nature, origin and destiny of spirits, as well as their relationship with the corporeal world. That is very important when we talk about mediumship, because when he says science that deals with the nature, origin and destiny of spirits, we know that we are all spirits and not physical beings. We are three-dimensional beings. That is, in essence, we are a spirit, we have a perispirit, which is the intermediate body, and we express ourselves through the physical body. And we are constantly related with, interacting, let's say, with the incarnate and disincarnate beings. If we are conscious of that or not, if we are aware of not, yet that is happening. The mediumship study is one of the most beautiful spiritual initiations. It is an experience of self-knowledge. All of us who choose to study mediumship, we will find out that it is a proposal of self-knowledge, because it will help us to understand more and more the way that we function as psychological and emotional beings as we are, as a consequence as spirits or spiritual beings as we are. It's worthwhile considering if we have the opportunity to study mediumship, because it means that we will be directed inwards, which helps us to awake more in who we are, how we function, what we can do differently. That helps us to choose from views that perhaps we haven't considered yet, and that is all helping us to become better beings and happier beings in the life wherever we are, either on the earth or either in the spiritual world. Leon Denis, in the book Espíritos e Médiuns, says, the set of faculties that enable the human being to communicate with the invisible world is called mediumship. And then we carry on. Odilon Fernandes, in the book Mediunidade, Perguntas e Respostas, when he asked, in my talk tonight, you will realize I have a lot of questions, which always will bring the answers by different spirits who are helping us to understand this topic. Then Odilon Fernandes was asked, how can mediumship be defined in a more comprehensive way? Mediumship is mainly a perception that places man in deeper integration with life beyond the five senses. That is what we really find out, especially if we are with a more ostensive mediumship. Then we have our perceptions more open, more spread than the five normal senses. And that is part of our process that we are achieving through our path of evolution. And as we go through the talk, we also will find out why is that, why some people come through a new life in the flesh with more ostensivity and others not, as we carry on with our talk. Emmanuel, in the book O Consolador, he says, what is the medium's greatest need? Understanding that we are all mediums, either ostensive or not, but we are all. And this is presented to us in the Medium's book by Allan Kardec, when he says that in general we are all mediums, mainly because we all think. Through our thoughts, through the way that we think, we are already intercommunicating with different beings, either on the incarnate level or with the disincarnate as well. So what is our greatest need? It is to evangelize ourselves. The mediums need to study a lot, observe intensively, and work in all times for their own enlightenment. Why is it so important for us to, let's say, educate ourselves? And in order to educate ourselves, we need to study. Why do we need to study? For us to understand more ourselves and also understand what is mediumship, to understand how are we communicating already constantly, interacting with the spiritual world and the material world, and also how we can help ourselves to enlighten us more on daily basis, understanding that our evolution or progress is a gradual process that each one of us is invited to engage consciously and participate with that. And Divaldo Franco and Raul Teixeira, in the book Diretrizes de Segurança, it was asked to Raul, even not Divaldo, what is the purpose of mediumship on earth? We can ask ourselves, what is the purpose for us? And Divaldo answers that mediumship is above all an opportunity to serve. So we start to understand, as more as we go into the topic of mediumship and understanding ourselves as eternal beings as we are, that we are given a new opportunity here on earth now for us to evolve, and knowing that no one evolves through selfishness, then mediumship can be understood as a proposal of become more altruistic, which means to serve not only us, it is us or dear ones, and also the wider, the bigger family that we are part as brothers and sisters in the spirit, which means the humanity. And in order to serve more, in order to serve with more quality, we need to qualify ourselves. And that is why it's important to study. Without study in any profession, not that mediumship is a profession, but in any field, in order to know how to do and qualify ourselves, the study is vital, is fundamental. Ivone Pereira, in the book As Obsessões do Espiritismo, she states that studying is an elemental basis for any candidate to the cultivation of goodness, but the character education is the vital condition of the genuine mediumship at the service of the Creator. Why is she stating here that studying is important, but cultivating the character is much more? Because I can be a being who is very evolved through my intellectual intelligence, but I may not have developed my emotional intelligence, and therefore I may know a lot intellectually, which I can talk very easily about, but it does not mean that I'm able to live that in my daily life, because I haven't prepared myself or educated myself within the way that I think, the way that I feel, the way that I behave according to what I'm learning. And that is a different step. All of us who started the journey already, we know that the first step, yes, is the studies, which helps us to work on the cognitive level, but then it's very different when you go on the action level to behave, and that is our challenge. Yeah? Again, Odilon Fernandes, in the book Mediunidade e Sabedoria, says that the daily cultivation of mediumship is tiresome, almost impracticable in the world in which we live. Quite often, sometimes we hear that, and the answer is for our own learning. This is the challenge to be overcome. Nobody manages to win their own selves without continuous renewal efforts. To spiritualize oneself is also a matter of habit. All the way that we behave, the way that we are, we conditioned ourselves through many, many existences. If you are conscious of that or not, yet this is the way that we are now. Through exercising, quite a lot of who we are, or habits, or ways of being, has been unconsciously. Now the proposal that Spiritism is offered to us, that we participate consciously through our education process of liberation, of evolution. Why is it important to continuous renewal efforts? Because our old patterns, old habits, very difficult. We will be changing them once we try once. We need to go through several times. We need to repeat the same experience up to the point that we create new habits, new conditions, new patterns, new belief systems, and also equip ourselves through the action level that affects us emotionally. And that is only, as any learning, be achievable through exercise, through training in a continuous way. And the approach that Jesus is offering to all of us, that training, that constant effort and exercise is be done by love. We don't need to be harsh with ourselves. The invitation, the proposal of spiritual education is through love. That is very important for us, that we don't end up being critical. Usually we have already these negative aspects in ourselves, and we may demand more what we can be at the moment. So self-acceptance, self-respect, self-love is very vital, although we are making efforts on a constant basis, but based on that more flexible inner state of mind. Who does not prove loyalty in his small duties does not successfully carry out those whose importance require more persistence and sense of responsibility. When we are talking about mediumship, it's vital that all of us, as we said already previously, that we are all mediums, that we learn to value the small tasks that life is presented to us, so that we can train ourselves, to equip ourselves, morally speaking, that is speaking, to grow, mature ourselves psychologically, emotionally, for bigger tasks that later on life will present to all of us. If we don't prepare ourselves with the small tasks that life is presented to us, the bigger ones, if we want to face them, we will find it difficult to lead them forward and to carry on. That is usually because we are not prepared fully, because it needs more renunciation. It needs usually much more work through our personal interest, that we can consider the need of helping others on a bigger perspective. How could a medium be more medium than one is? That's a good question to ask ourselves, isn't it? How could I be more medium than I am? It's interesting, isn't it? The path to the medium can become more medium than one is to serve more. Are we seeking that pathway? That is vital. So in order to serve more others, what needs to happen? Is it not possible that I need to learn to forget a bit of myself? Forget not in a sense of abandoning myself, but working my selfish way of being in the universe. As more as we free ourselves from the selfishness within through the exercise of altruism, more we become instruments of God to serve humanity. But it has to come from within out. Therefore, it's not possible to me sometimes ask to do certain tasks if I'm not prepared for that. It needs more persistence and perseverance. It must be said that mediumship is not an improvisation or a chance event. It is part of the individual's organic constitution and has its roots planted in causes and decisions prior to the time of its outbreak. Sometimes people say, I don't know, I never felt that, I never sensed what I'm sensing, now I'm feeling that, I'm seeing this. Why is that? When we study spiritism in more profundity, we find out that that part is already part of our program for this lifetime. Sometimes people come from Brazil, as we, majority of us here are from Brazil, and then we never felt anything. When we come to London and suddenly things start to change. And we ask ourselves, why is that? Usually it is an indication that is part of our program, what we already accepted in the spiritual world before coming to earth. We always end up coming back where we left in the prior existence. That is very important. And always for our own good. That is vital. What are the steps to be taken by the mediums in their mediumistic education? That is Raul Teixeira who says in the book Diretrizes de Segurança, the institution guided by the doctrine must approach them to the doctrinal studies, the charity work on behalf of the needy, to those labors that may gradually discipline the creature. Why is that? So we can ask, well, is that because we are indisciplined then? And surely if we carry on studying with humility, with simplicity, we will find out that a lot of our habits, a lot of our patterns, they are quite undisciplined. We are lacking discipline. One of the main objectives in the mediums, especially when he is ostensive medium, is learning to discipline himself. What to discipline? The way that we think, the way that we feel, the way that we behave. And that is a constant task, I would say, for life. Why is he so important? And the first thing what we do as a spiritist, offer studies that we can understand more about mediumship. And then also invite the person, the medium, to engage in voluntary work. Why is that so important? Again, because we have been quite apart from the work of goodness so far. So now we accepted already in the spiritual world that we have a broader understanding what we did, what we haven't done, what needs to be done, and we agreed what will be better for us. So now it is to open ourselves and to serve more instead of be served. And unless the medium exercise that, we still may remain quite in the limit, selfish way within, and therefore having difficult to carry out or mediumship from a higher level. And the discipline which is part of our program from all of us who are here on earth or even in the spiritual world. And the will, is that important for us? I would say very important, because unless we exercise our willpower, which quite often may be a bit weak and at times stronger, at times weaker, if we don't pay attention to that, we may fall into our old habits, old patterns. This is why it's so important. In the mediumship field, the will has predominance. Associated with reason, it is the will that will print the route to be followed and maintained. Why is that, if you carry on? With the willpower, the medium accepts or rejects the tool with the spirits. And this is not just when we are working on a mediumship practice in the spiritual center. This happens on daily basis, either when we are, because mediums, we are 24 hours a day, either if we are at home, if we are in our workplace, or if we are in the spiritual center, and all times that is happening. If I have a strong willpower, if I already, as we presented in the previous slides, is studied so that I understand myself more and understand that I'm responsible for my body, that I'm responsible for what I think, what I feel, within that healthy approach, I will know what to accept and what to reject. And surely, as mediums as we are, educating ourselves for the superior values of life, we will learn that we still carry negative aspects, and those may be the plagues that also other spirits may be tuning in. Noticing them is one thing, validating it is another. If we have a strong willpower, we will reject them. And in that way we are re-educating ourselves. We are disciplining ourselves. We are becoming better beings. Through the will, disciplines the practice of mediumship, exercises perseverance and firmness of purpose. Quite often we may find ourselves with the old patterns to give up, not to do what we need to do, not to accept what life is presented to us, because I haven't persevered in my previous existences. I haven't conditioned myself with that yet. I haven't created that habit that it becomes natural. What is natural to us is what we exercised more. But remember, all habits and conditions, they started one day and carried on and went on being reinforced through probably quite a lot on conscious level. Now the proposal is that we help ourselves from the conscious level and re-educate ourselves. Firmness is quite important because we still bring habits sometimes that we may give up, as I said, and the firmness is not being harsh or being critical. It's mainly positioning ourselves with ourselves from a superior perspective, even if you find it difficult. Understand that the difficulty merely is teaching us that we are facing some new experience which we haven't trained ourselves with, and we are given the opportunity to do that in the present. Why most mediums are preferably used by entities as ill as them? That happens quite often. We are not saying every medium, but it happens quite often, especially in the beginning of the outbreak of mediumship. And we haven't learned anything, so sometimes it happens. Mediumship is commitment to the conscious, thirsty for recompense in the past. Mediumship, to be dignified, needs the lights of the noble conscious. Again, why most are with the ill entities? Because remember, we are not just who we are in this lifetime. We are eternal beings who lived already centuries and centuries of different experiences. And we bring all patterns, quite often some negative ones, and those are the ones that help us to connect with those beings. And because we haven't educated our mediumship, means we haven't learned to discern within what is good and what is not. We haven't learned to select, and then even unconsciously we may tune into the same. But as the studies carry on, as we persist and insist to understand more, we also will free ourselves and then equip ourselves as a good instruments to serve ourselves for the good and also the others who are with us. André Luiz, in the book Missionários da Luz, he says, the pineal gland retains ascendancy in the entire endocrine system. It is linked to the mind through electromagnetic principles from the vital field. Common science cannot yet identify this. It commands the subconscious forces under the direct determination of the willpower. The pineal gland is very important to understand when we're talking about mediumship. because it is really the channel from where all the spiritual connections happen, and they affect us straight on the emotional level that quite often people may not understand. If we go a bit further, we'll touch on more on that. And Marlene Nobre, in the book O Dom da Mediunidade, she carries on saying, as for the psychic symptoms of mediumship, such as irritability, mood swings, panic attacks, crying spells, etc., we must remember the pineal gland connection with the emotional center, hypothalamus. It's even important for us while in the flesh that we understand our own biology, how it works, and then to connect how our perispirit interacts with our biology, and then to understand how the commands from the spirit interact with the perispirit in the biological body. So it's easier for us to understand in that. And also, if we are open to receive external influences, how all that field of communication affects us. And a lot of people usually on psychological and emotional treatment, they come with this kind of psychological aspects and don't understand that. And the Spiritist doctrine is here really helping us to understand ourselves, not from a physical level only, but understanding, as Ruana de Angelis says, that essentially we are emotional beings. Generally, people have difficulty maintaining emotional stability very widely, from sadness to joy, from depression to euphoria, from good cheer to despair. Not always these emotions are associated with the day-to-day. Does it have something to do with mediumship? It's interesting to ask, eh? Without a doubt, this cyclothymia, this inexplicable diversification of emotional states is associated with the nature of the spirits who approach us, the influences that we suffer. The influences that we suffer has usually to do with where we are in the relationship with ourselves, if that is conscious or unconscious. If we are centered and more imbalanced, even when we are approached by those spirits with this kind of psychological states of mind, we are not affected by. We feel it, but we learn really to become independent. This is, in other words, we will say we become more independent psychologically and emotionally from others. And that is one of the proposals or the outcome of mediumship education. Does this mean that both thoughts and emotions may simply reflect what is happening with the spirit that gets close? Exactly, but we must consider the question of tuning. Generally, these entities are compatible with our ways of being, trends and ideas, as I just mentioned. And they know quite often more who we are, really, truly, than we ourselves know, because we are often unconscious about our deeper habits and conditions and patterns and belief systems that we carry with them. So in that way of looking at it, if we start our mediumship education, we have certain moments of difficulty, we do understand that they are our brothers and sisters who are helping us too to educate ourselves. Because through these feelings that we don't understand, we go and seek for help in one way or another. And that helps us to bring ourselves more closer to us through the new understanding. How are people going to know if their problems are due to the unfolding of a mediumistic faculty or a mere result of spiritual misfits? That's quite often a good question, isn't it? How do I know that? In principle, they should not worry about it, even if they have mediumship to develop. It is essential to do the spiritual treatment and overcome their misfits. So it's not that important for us to question about, is this me, is it mine, is it coming from the spirit? Even in the Spirit's book, we have the question that helps us to clarify that in case of a doubt, is it the spirit or not, or is it mine or not? The important is it positive or not? If it's negative, doesn't matter if it's coming from mine, individuality, or if it's coming from somebody else's. The importance is for me to treat myself as a spirit through these studies, through the voluntary work, through the spiritual healing that we have also as a complementary help that helps us to overcome, and above all through our spiritual education. That is the main point, that free ourselves from any negative aspect or any disturbing aspect that we may be in. And remember that we are all imperfect here on earth, therefore we are all having shortcomings yet. Knowing them and working on them, that is what frees us. Not necessarily being perfect, because that is not possible for us in this stage where we are. We are on a journey of perfecting ourselves, which is different to demand to be perfect, which is not possible, as I said. It is difficult to find people who maintain a perfect emotional and physical stability. Does it have something to do with the mediumship sensitivity? So it means that we are all on earth in the hospital here, as we study with the spirits, working on us and helping us to heal from within. Then we go back where we started. This study is important because it helps us to go within and identify the issues, but also to identify the potentials to self-heal. That is very important. It has everything to do with it. We live immersed in an ocean of mental vibrations emitted by incarnate and disincarnate spirits. We repeat again how important it is, the study of mediumship, which helps us to understand more that we are beings created by God. We are on the journey of evolution for many centuries, and we are coming from a more primarily world where we are now in the trials and expiations, that it changes towards a regeneration world. So have you been better back there or worse? I think all the evidence that we have, that through our own ignorance we didn't know much what we know now. So now we have better conditions and better probabilities for us to help ourselves to overcome our shortcomings, to insist, to persist, to overcome our misfits, and to really invest in our spiritual progress. What is the advantage of not being a medium? We can ask ourselves, what is that? And it's so considering the other aspects. Still, Richard Simonetti is telling us, I reiterate that we are all in constant contact with the spiritual world. The knowledge of the mechanisms governing this condition is crucial in favor of our stability. Most physical and psychological problems that afflict us are directly related to the action of disturbed or disturbing spirits. Disturbed or disturbing spirits does not mean from the outside necessarily. It also can mean, excuse me, that we are disturbed spirits, and therefore we connect with also the similar ones. Again, it's so important to understand, not to blame ourselves, not to be harsh, as I mentioned previously, but to lighten up our minds in terms of opening our consciousness to become more aware and to understand that we have been created by God, as I mentioned previously, with love, in order to love, and that we are here in healing ourselves through learning to exercise to love ourselves and also others who are with us, either incarnates or disincarnates. If we are ostensive mediums or not, I reiterate again, we all are interconnected with other beings, wherever we are. We often see mediums endowed with reasonable mediumship faculties who give up their commitment. Is there any loss? This is quite common happening here on earth, according to what we read in the books. The mediumship sensitivity does not only work on spiritual exchange meetings. It is in the mediumship practice, with the studies and disciplines that are inherent to it, that the mediums ensure resources to maintain their own balance. Away from it, they can fall into disorders and misfits. So if I give up, I still continue as a medium. I choose to give up the opportunity to enlighten myself as a spirit, to invest in myself to grow, which is a great opportunity, but I still will be communicating and be influenced by those constant interactions that happen with us. Does the medium come programmed for this task, as we mentioned previously? Yes, this is a commitment made in the spiritual world. Nothing happens by chance. So when we say, I don't want to be a ostensive medium, no way. Or if the other said, I want to be, no, it's not how we want it, it's how it is. And it says, there is an investment in the candidate to mediumship related to studies, planning, adapting the body. All of these includes diligent care of the spiritual mentors. So did our program start here on earth? No. Already in the spiritual world. And can we see how much has been investing in us already before adopting a new physical body? And we are never alone with ourselves. We have our spiritual mentors who are with us, helping us in this proposal. Should the participant always study? We go back again. Without a doubt, without the study, it is difficult to sustain the conscience of responsibility and to develop the group's potential. Why is it difficult to sustain the conscience of responsibility? Merely because we are more imperfect than perfect. And that is said with great consciousness. considering where we are coming from. So if I'm not engaged in a proposal that constantly helps me to remind myself where I am and who I am, and helps me to expand my consciousness of who I am, I may fall back in my old patterns, in my old habits, and then be instead of a good instrument of helping in the environment where I am, in the group, probably a great instrument for disturbing. And that is not what we agreed in the spiritual water. We agreed to come back this time, because usually it's not the first time. We have been already in this proposal with this kind of investment, but we agreed this time to do what we need to do and not what we want to do. Are the unpleasant symptoms that accompany the unfolding of mediumship generated by the faculty? It is not the mediumship that generates the disorder in the body, but the fluid actions of the spirits who favor or not the dystonia according to their quality. So it's very important, mediumship is neutral. It's not the mediumship that causes any psychological or emotional or even biological disturbance within our system. It is the negative or toxic influences that we allow either within our own patterns that we carry, or those who influence us with our permission. Because any spirit, any being can only interfere somebody else with the permission of the other person, of the other individual. And that the self-understanding, the self-knowledge is important, because we learn to become more vigilant, and in that way we become more independent on a thought and emotional level. Does the obsession have something material? Correct. The obsessor, taking advantage of the latent faculties of the obsessed, caused him physical impressions. Mediumship is thought to thought, perispirit to perispirit. And then if we carry on, what does mediumship have to do with obsession? Obsession is a mediumistic manifestation of a strange etiology. Everyone that is obsessed is a medium in potential, although not every medium is potentially obsessed. Because surely the medium that is most balanced is not obsessed, but all the obsessed person is a potential medium, because of the faculty that is open and a person may not be aware of, haven't learned how to select, how to discipline, how to select internally, and then it's more open, let's say, to be influenced. And through the mediumship education, that will be balanced, that will be dealt with. Mediumship is consensual partnership. Obsession is an unilateral physical exploration in which the obsessed struggles in the grip of the obsessor. Mediumship, educated mediumship, when it's practiced in the spiritist centers after the candidate, after the person went through his studies that the spiritist center presented, then it is a consensual partnership, because the person, the individual, the medium is already centered, more balanced, and is knowing what is happening. But when it's that is not part, then we may go into the exploration on the psycho level. What does mediumship have to do with obsession? We carry on. The practice of mediumship only leads to obsession. The mediums that, by their thoughts and carelessness, constantly attract the company of slumber spirits, by parasitizing the mind in a painful vampirization process. It's not the question because we are mediums that we are suffering from obsession. No. Remember, as we mentioned previously, we are all mediums, ostensibly or not. It is our inner negative aspects that we haven't looked previously, or even in this existence, that we are not conscious of, or we don't want to change, because sometimes we are quite rebellious. That is what really attracts the spirits, or the negative aspect. And that, all of those habits, is we have ways how to change that within. Gradually. We cannot, nature doesn't jump, as we always say, so we need to conquer our own nature. Is mediumship itself responsible for the outbreak of obsessive phenomena? A lot of people sometimes, without understanding or without the study, they may blame mediumship for that, but for obsession, but it's not. Let's see what we learn. No. Divaldo Franco says that in the book Médiuns e Mediunidades. The obsession results from the moral identification of the involved that are in the same vibratory rate, in the need of rehabilitation, love, and elevation. in the same vibratory rate, in the need of rehabilitation. So all of us, incarnate or disincarnate, who are in tune in the same level, we are spirits in evolution. We need to help ourselves to cure within, to heal from within, and then also help the others. Every one of us who are changing the way that we think, the way that we feel, the way that we act, to help ourselves, to put ourselves in a practice of goodness more and more, and to qualify ourselves in that way, we are already helping us and helping the others who are with us. Because the charity that is asking for us to practice, it starts with ourselves, with them, and then without. Obsession is a pathological mediumistic relationship, one that has fallen ill, sick, because an interaction between the perispirits of the obsessing spirit with the obsessed occurs, and the former is expressed in the behavior, attitudes, and words of the latter. Perispirit on perispirit. So when the spirit comes closer to us, if we are conscious or not, the communication happens not on the physical body, but on the perispirit, which is the spiritual body. And then some of us may feel it on the physical body, but the communication is happening on the perispiritual level. Again, that is important. Sometimes, through the ostensivity, we feel it on the physical body, which helps us then to take care, according to what we are learning or what we have learned already, to change any situation, that we become more balanced. Should mediums tell people everything they see, hear, and perceive in their contact with the spirits? Sometimes when we start mediumship and we haven't quite studied or we don't know to deal, we may start to say about, but that is not safe for the medium. That shows very unbalanced medium. The mediator who is always talking about their experiences with the spirits does not deserve the credibility that is asking for. The suitable medium is always discreet in their actions. As more as we educate ourselves as mediums, as spirits as we are, more we are falling into the middle pathway, which is the balanced way. So we won't have the need to show off ourselves. Constantly when we are working here, to be more humble day by day, and in that way it helps us, because we are more humble, we have less need to talk about what is not in a positive reference. And also it helps us to become more discreet, more silent, learn to silence within. Should mediumship be concerned with revelations concerning the past life of someone? Sometimes people are mistaken with this information. And again, is Spiritism, what we learn here, and understanding Spiritism as an education proposal for all of us, either incarnates or disincarnates, then we learn that no, we should not. The ones interested to know what they might have been and what they may have done must seek to analyze themselves, their habits and trends, what they do and what they are, and certainly will have a rough idea of who they were and did. Self-knowledge, mediumship education, being a proposal of psychological and emotional understanding, will help us to see more or less where we have been, once we honestly realize and recognize what our thoughts are about, what our cognitive belief system more often are present in our psyche, what predominates our emotional level, what are our trends, what are my likes, what are my dislikes. In that way, we honestly will know more or less where we have been. And in essence, it's not vital that we know exactly what happened. Because in the Gospel according to Spiritism, Allan Kardec also in the Superior Spirits tells us that what we need to know, we know already here, and what not is a blessing for us not to know, so that we can use our free will and invest in our progress in the here and now, to start from where we are and invest in our progress. Why is the medium almost always more likely to feel offended? Mediumship has nothing to do with the resentfulness of the medium. The mediums that always feel offended are uneasy in their interests, showing a personalism that needs to be tackled. That is profoundly important for us. Because unless we focus and understand our ego level, which is part of these egoistic ways of being, we will find it difficult to engage in a work, and we stay in a work because of these tendencies that come up. Resentfulness is a spiritual weakness. The one easily resented finds it easier to withdraw from the task. Usually when people leave the tasks, the works, and that they are involved, they don't want anymore, because it's more, the person is driven from the ego level onwards, not from the self. We know that we carrying great limits, but the limits we also carry within the potential to overcome. But if I go away, if I run away from the difficulty, I'm not helping myself to stay in the experience, to gain experience and to grow with experience. Why do the mediums seem to suffer more than others? I think I jump a bit here more. What should be done with the mediums that do not like studying? That is important what we learn here. Make them aware that they will remain in the ignorance. And if we stay in our ignorance, we will be quite easily enslaved rather than having access to the truth that sets free. The truth that the knowledge that the mediumship education brings to us, helps us to access more, to go more into the direction of the truth and to free ourselves from within. But if I run away again, or if I don't want to follow that approach, I may be in a more difficult time for a certain time, because for sure we all evolve and we all move on. And for what do you have to say to the sad and depressed mediums? A lot of people get depressed when they are dealing with the mediumship. And it's important to learn with Richard Simonetti when he says, what they seek to forget about themselves, a bit more, serving even more. We are depressed. If we study depression, it's the movement within. We close ourselves. If you use Plato, he says that we go within ourselves, and the solution is to go without ourselves, which is, considering the previous slide, is to learn to serve. And in order to serve, I need to learn to forget myself a bit more. To question how I'm using my time, how much I can serve my family as humanity, not just me. And then be free, we cure ourselves from depression already. If not in this existence, surely through the different ones. And here is again, why is depression a common condition in mediums? The depressive crises affecting certain mediums are from the guilt complex that is carried in the unconscious. Remember that we are eternal beings, and we had already many existences. And a lot what we did, being through our ignorance, was against God's law. And as we remain within ourselves God's law, that creates the conflict, which quite often some mediums may bring in the present. But it's not to feed the complex, it is to free themselves from the complex. Because God, who is our Creator, our Father, is loving and good. He loves us as we are, and expects from us that we start to believe in Him, in His way of loving us, as imperfect as we are. So instead of wasting our energy in blaming ourselves, it is investing the energy in freeing ourselves. I go a bit further because of the time. Let's go more towards the end. There is a lot, as I said already, that we have to present, but we don't have that much time available. So if we go with Joana de Angelis in the book Espírito e Vida, she teaches us, so that the spiritual mentors can use you more securely, it is necessary to know your capacity of service in favor of your brothers. So how can I become with more credibility with the superior spirits? Only the way that I re-educate myself towards the superior references of life, and I learn to put myself of service towards others. In that way, I will become more and more of trust with the superior spirits, and the work will come to us according what we have to offer to life. So again, it is important to open up. And Divaldo Franco says also, mediumship with Jesus is a sublime bridge where transit the highest expressions of the divine thought among men. Do we choose to be this channel? Are we conscious to become this channel? All of us can do that, if you want to. All of us can do that. And then, if you go on here, Emmanuel, in the book Palavras de Emmanuel, says, the word of the guide is pleasant and friendly, but the word of enlightenment belongs to each one of us. We all have our spiritual instructors, our spiritual mentors will help us, but they don't do what we only can do. And that is merely because we need to put ourselves in the experience in order to get the experience. Otherwise we would remain ourselves as children, as we are. Adenauer Novaes, in the book Psicologia e Espiritualidade, he helps us to focus on that when he says, in this walk, through mediumship, it takes courage, discipline, and confidence that the process is personal and not transferable. Mediumship education, elevation of the spirit, it is a personal proposal. Are we in that process? Are we accepting in a free way within to go through the experience, even the difficult ones, understanding that in the stage that we live is normal, it's natural that we have difficult moments here and there, but learn from them, not run away from them. And then just to finish, actually, as we are coming to the end, and I went through the wrong one. To finish here to the end is really to invite us all. The subject is very big, very broad, very interesting, and as more as we study mediumship, more we find out that we want more, because it is telling us about how we interact with ourselves, how we interact with the spirits, either incarnate with the incarnate, incarnate with the disincarnate with the incarnate, as we are all brothers and sisters in a spirit. And understanding when we are, again, at the now novice telling us, we do not need to be troubled or thrown when studying and exercising mediumship. It is a faculty of the spirit for the spirit which targets overall happiness. I am happy to be a medium. I am happy with my faculty. Do I understand that it is the faculty of the spirit? So if it's with me, it has nothing to do with Karina or anybody else, but for the spirit, for my progress, for my evolution, for reach my happiness, is vital to reflect on that. It is a great opportunity for us to lift up to the superior spheres and to choose ourselves freely, as the Spiritism don't impose anything, but freely choosing to be mediums of goodness wherever we are and with who we are. Learning to be more humble, learning to be more... It always goes down, but I want to have one that I want to present just to end here, if I find it. I don't know where it is, but it is very important for us. But in reality it is... I jump here some slides. In reality, what it is about is helping us to take the responsibility, as Emmanuel also in the book of Consolador teaches us, that the enlightenment process, it starts with ourselves. And as more as we start to grow and understand, more stronger we will feel within, and less, let's say, problematic our experiences will be. Evolving spiritually, growing, does not mean that we won't have problems, but we will be dealing with the problems in a different way. That is what is changing. It's not changing the scenario without, it is changing especially the scenario within, that helps us to deal in a different way from whatever is presented to us on the outside. And as we are coming to the end, let's ask the greatest medium of God, which is Jesus, our mother, our guide, helping us to enlighten us, and also helping us to bless us with all of us, mediums as we are, engage with the proposal of being instrument of goodness for ourselves and for others, today and always. And in that way we finish our talk, and now we are open for questions and answers if there is any left. I'm ready here. If there is any doubt, if there is any question. If there are not, let's me start with question then. What did I learn with this talk? If I were to respond for myself, what did I learn as a medium as I am with this talk? What did this talk help me as a medium? If someone doesn't know in English, say in Portuguese, I translate it. O que essa palestra me ajudou na compreensão como medium que sou? O que me favoreceu? What would I say?
To try to help me to accept it.
To try to help me to accept mediumship?
Yeah.
Good. What else?
I have to study.
I have to study. That sounds heavy. Perhaps we can change that a bit. Instead of have, I choose to. Is there any difference?
Yeah.
What is the difference?
A choice is better than the imposition.
Why is it better? It is always important for us to understand why. Because then it makes easier our learning.
Because you decide.
Because you decide. So when I have to, you are is almost like in an obligation process, which creates tension within and usually creates the reverse effect. Because you get tired, exhausted, and then you give up. But if you are making a conscious choice, now understanding why it is important, so I choose what is the best for me, in a short, in a long term. And that choice is a free will that we are really doing with ourselves. It's not imposed. And that it becomes easier to engage in the proposal of a study, of renewing, or whatever we are engaged with. And somebody else? What did it help us? Martin?
I think it's the best thing as well is when you come to, alone, is choosing rituals, the mentors rituals. I think it's important to feel yourself you have to do something for you, of course, you study everything, but it's not feel alone. And sometimes people think, oh, I have to change, it's more complicated.
It sounds more heavy.
Yes.
When you notice that in the ignorance that we are without the studies, that we think that we are alone. But the studies actually help us to show and to prove that no one is alone. That we are always surrounded by our spiritual benefactors who are always there. Things are planning in the spiritual world, as I presented previously, and they are with us here. The only way they are not doing what we need to do is the same as a parent would always do for the kid what the kid needs to do. In that way the kid will never learn. And this is why, because they love us and they want to see us to grow, they stand back and let us to fall down, and then we stand up, and then we move on, and then we learn, and then we become stronger. But it's very, very consoling in that sense that we know that Jesus is always there, that we re-educate ourselves in terms of being with Jesus, knowing that He is with us. We quite often are not with Him. And that is the proposal that helps us also. Huh? Anybody else?
I think for me, if I were to say anything, it's just helping me on a day-by-day basis. It's practice on every time in my life. So if I'm at work or if I'm at home, I can notice by my emotions if I'm actually leaving that I'm learning. And most of the time it's after I've done something that I realize that I was either attracting other spirits in any sort of dimension, incarnate or discarnate, that I actually could have acted in a different way, that I could have been more aware, that I wasn't being invited to attract superior spirits, like you said, but through my sort of thoughts, through my feelings and habits that I'm unconscious repeating, I could have changed or chosen a different pattern.
So you are becoming aware that after the opportunity is gone, then you become aware of, which is part of the process. Remember that we have been much more unconscious in the previous existence, or even in this existence, if you look back 10, 15 years. But now that as we carry on studying, we become more and more conscious. So what today you realize, afterwards, tomorrow you will be identifying in the here and now. That is what we are achieving. Okay, what else?
For me, the most important thing is the realization that we are mediums all the time. And that means, now thinking about it, that we have the opportunity to start all over again every day, every moment. So instead of losing time or wasting time by regretting what I have just done, I can take the opportunity and do differently now and decide to connect with the higher spirits from now on, instead of just wasting my energy regretting the past.
Excellent. So it's really investing in the re-education process in a positive way. Even if we identify our negative aspects, which is part of the healing process, we will not change what we cannot identify first. So we need to become conscious of our shadows, as Jung said, or our imperfections. And in that loving approach that Jesus is presented to us, we embrace us and we invest in us, and we also know and learn that we carry the potentials within to overcome it and to grow with it. Anybody else?
I felt the same way as him, that I need to study more. I choose to study more. And also to use as an incentive for me to study more and learn more. And that is not just for me, but to help, to serve.
Precisely. It is very stimulating when we understand on a deeper level what mediumship is, who we are as mediums, and what we came back to really do here, for our own good and also for the good of humanity. Actually, we make sometimes think, oh, I'm this tiny bit of human being, but we all are very, very important in the universe. We are all great in terms of being helpers of God to change different patterns within the society, within the family, within the environment, the local where we live. That is very stimulating when we understand. Remember, who we are is what we did with us so far. Who we will be tomorrow is what we are doing in the here and now. Our evolution, although it is together with everybody else, but within it is a lonely journey. And it does not to be depressed. If we are happy and understand from a superior viewpoint, we are pleased to be God's children and given the opportunity to evolve, to grow within whatever faculty we have, because the faculty is according to our need of evolution. We all are good in essence, we all have potentials for growth. It's vital that we believe in ourselves, because God believes in us. Can we believe in us? And in that way we live as we are coming to the end. And again, I sincerely wish the best, all of us as mediums as we are, that we may really feel enlightened by the superior spirit, by the superior messages that come to us, and really invest in us to become better and to serve more and more towards the goodness of ourselves and also for the others where we are. The opportunities are given to all of us, and validate also the small opportunities. The big experiences are the result of the small that is given to me, and I value, I have pleasure in fulfilling them, and then it will grow gradually as we grow from within, with happiness, understanding that the focus, always the objective, is to become better beings, and becoming better beings, we are happier beings. And in that we are coming to the end, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Evanise. And we will take the opportunity today that we have Evanise here to ask her to do the final prayer for us, taking this opportunity since she came especially to give us this lecture. So let's follow her in thought.
Dear Master Jesus, dear Lord, our Father, we thank you for this opportunity of enlightenment of our minds and hearts, mediums as all of us are, incarnate and disincarnate, present in this meeting of enlightenment. We thank you for the superior spirits who assist us all here tonight, helping us to expand our conscious mind, helping us to understand different perspectives of mediumship as an opportunity of evolution towards goodness, towards God. And we, with our hearts full of joy, thank you and are grateful for being together as spirits, brothers and sisters as we are, created by God with love in order to love. Dear Master Jesus, may your light fall upon each one of us. May your love touch us all. May your peace involve us all. And may we feel rejoiced by those superior vibrations, feeling happier, stronger from within, believing in us, believing in life, believing in goodness, and invest in us as eternal beings as we are, today and always. So be it.
We say thank you once again to Evanise for the talk today,
And we thank everyone for being here, and welcome to the new member who has just arrived. And may God be with us. May Jesus always bless us. Thank you.